The sun was setting over Seattle, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and pink. Inside a quiet home, Emily sat on the couch, her eyes fixed on the TV, though her mind was far away. The movie playing was an old favorite, one she used to watch with her husband. Mark. The familiar music and dialogue made her heart ache. Her 8-year-old son, Noah, sat beside her, half asleep and holding his blanket. He looked at her with sleepy eyes and asked, "Mom, why are we watching this? Dad will be back soon." His voice was so innocent, so sure, it almost broke her. Emily smiled gently, though her heart felt heavy. "Yeah, sweetheart," she whispered. "Dad will be back soon." Shh. She reached over, brushed a curl from his forehead, and kissed him softly. He smiled, satisfied with her answer, and turned back to the screen. But Emily couldn't stop the thought that echoed in her mind. Will he really? Mark had been gone for 3 months. He said it was a work trip, just 2 weeks in Portland. At first, everything felt normal. They talked every night, shared stories, laughed over the phone. But after a while, the calls became shorter. Then they stopped. His texts came less often, filled with excuses, busy day, late meeting, talk soon. And now, nothing. No calls. No messages. Just silence. Emily told herself not to worry. She reminded herself that Mark had always been hardworking. He loved his job and loved his family. She told her heart to be patient. But when she looked at the clock every night and saw the empty side of the bed, she felt something deep inside her changing. Doubt, small at first, began to grow. When Noah finally fell asleep that night, Emily turned off the TV and sat in silence. The sound of the refrigerator humming was the only thing in the room. She looked at her phone again. No new notifications. Her heart sank. She wanted to call him, to hear his voice, to ask why he hadn't called. But she was afraid. What if he didn't answer? What if something was wrong? Or worse, what if he simply didn't want to talk to her anymore? The memories came flooding back. Their first date at the old coffee shop downtown. Their wedding day under a soft drizzle of rain. The night Noah was born, and Mark cried, holding him for the first time. Those memories used to comfort her. Now they only reminded her of how distant things had become. She sighed and whispered to herself, "Where are you, Mark?" Her voice trembled as she said it. The question hung in the air with no answer. Then, suddenly, her phone lit up. A new message appeared. Her heart jumped. Maybe it was him. But when she opened it, the number was unknown. The message was short, almost haunting. "You deserve to know the truth." Emily froze. Her fingers trembled as she stared at the words. Her first thought was that it must be a mistake. Maybe it was spam? But the timing, it felt too strange, too direct. She reread it several times. Her stomach twisted with unease. What truth? About what? About who? She tried calling the number, but it went straight to voicemail. She didn't leave a message. She just sat there, her heart racing, her mind spinning. She checked the message again as if maybe the meaning would change. But it didn't. It was still just those 6 words. Emily stood up and walked to the window. The city lights shimmered outside. Cars moved along the streets. People were out there living their lives. And she was standing in her own house, wondering if her marriage was quietly falling apart. She tried to sleep that night but couldn't. Every sound made. Her heart jumped, the creak of the floor, the hum of the heater, the buzz of her phone. She checked it again and again, hoping for another message from Mark, but there was nothing. Only that one strange text that refused to leave her mind. When morning came, she put on a brave face for Noah. She made him pancakes, packed a school lunch, and smiled like everything was normal. Noah talked excitedly about his school trip next week, about how he wanted to tell his dad all about it when he came home. Emily nodded, pretending she believed that would happen. After dropping him off at school, she sat in her car for a long time. She thought about calling Mark again. She even typed a message, "Are you okay? Please call me." But then she deleted it. She didn't want to sound desperate. She wanted to believe he still cared, that he hadn't simply chosen to forget them. On her way home, she stopped at the coffee shop where they used to meet on weekends. The smell of roasted coffee beans filled the air, and for a moment, she almost smiled. She sat at their favorite corner table, the one near the window. It was empty, but she could almost see them there laughing, teasing each other, sharing quiet looks that spoke of love. But that was then. Now there was just her, a half-empty cup, and 1,000 questions. Later that day, Emily went through old photos on her phone, their last family vacation. Noah's birthday, Mark's smile that always reached his eyes. She wanted to believe that smile was still real. She wanted to believe that wherever he was thinking about them too. That evening, she picked Noah up from school. He was cheerful as always, talking nonstop about his day. When they reached home, she helped him with homework, made dinner, and tried to laugh with him. But when he asked, "Mom, can we call Dad tonight?" she felt her chest tighten. She hesitated, then said softly, "Dad might be busy, sweetheart. Maybe tomorrow." Noah nodded, trusting her words, then went back to drawing. His innocence both comforted and hurt her. He believed everything she said. He still believed in his dad. When night came again, the loneliness returned like a wave. Emily sat by the window, staring out into the dark. She checked her phone once more. No new messages. She sighed and whispered, "Please, Mark, just call me." As if on cue, her phone buzzed. Her heart leaped, but it wasn't him. It was the same unknown number again. This time, there was an image attached. Her hands shook as she opened it. The photo loaded slowly, pixel by pixel, until it appeared clearly on the screen. It was Mark, sitting at a cafe smiling, but he wasn't alone. Across from him was a woman, younger, laughing, her hand resting on his. They looked comfortable, familiar. Like two people who shared something more than just coffee, Emily's world went still. The room felt colder. Her hand trembled as she lowered the phone. She stared at the photo, trying to make sense of it, trying to believe it wasn't what it looked like. But deep down, she knew. Something inside her broke quietly, without sound, like glass cracking under pressure. She looked at the TV still playing in the background. It's the same movie she'd watched with him so many times before. It was a love story about two people who promised to never lie to each other. The irony made her laugh. But the sound came out as a sob. She wiped her tears quickly as Noah's voice called from the hallway. "Mom, can you tuck me in?" She swallowed the pain, turned off the TV, and went to him. "Of course, sweetheart," she said softly, forcing a smile, but as she tucked him in and watched him close his eyes, one thought wouldn't leave her mind: you deserve to know the truth. And now? She did that the next morning. Emily woke up early. The sky outside was gray and heavy with clouds. She made breakfast for Noah, packed his school bag, and kept her voice steady even though her mind was spinning. The photo from last night was all she could think about. It was still on her phone, Mark, sitting at a cafe, laughing with another woman. Every time she saw it, her chest tightened. She wanted to delete it, but couldn't. It felt like proof that her instincts had been right all along. After dropping Noah at school, she sat in her car for a long time. The world outside moved normally, people going to work, kids running cars, passing, but Emily felt frozen. How could everything look so normal when her world had changed overnight? She thought about calling Mark, but her hands wouldn't move. What would she even say? Who is she? Why are you with her? She had no proof except one photo, one moment frozen in time. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe he was just having coffee with a friend. But deep down, she knew. There was something different in his smile, the same smile he used to give her. When she got home, the house felt too quiet. She made herself a cup of coffee, but barely touched it. Every sound, the ticking clock, the hum of the fridge, seemed louder than usual. Her phone buzzed again, making her jump. Another message from the same unknown number. This time it said, "He's not who you think he is." Emily's breath caught. She stared at the screen, her heart pounding. Her first thought was anger. Who was this person? Why were they sending her this? Were they trying to hurt her or help her? She typed a reply, "Who are you? Why are you sending me this?" and hit send. No response. She tried calling the number again. Straight to voicemail. She didn't leave a message. Instead, she sat on the couch and stared at the wall, feeling small and powerless. At noon, her sister Claire called to check in. "Hey, Em, you sound tired. Everything okay?" Emily wanted to tell her everything, but the words caught in her throat. She forced a light tone. "I'm fine, just didn't sleep much." Claire didn't sound convinced. "Still no word from Mark?" "Not yet. He's busy," Emily said, her voice breaking slightly. Claire sighed. "Em, maybe it's time you stop giving him excuses." That sentence hit hard. Emily ended the call quickly, saying she had to pick up Noah soon. But Claire's words stayed in her head. Stop giving him excuses. That evening, when Noah came home, his smile brought her a small comfort. He talked about school, about how he made a new friend, about how he couldn't wait for his birthday next week. "Dad promised he'd be home for it," Noah said excitedly. Emily's heart squeezed. "Yes, he did," she replied softly. After Noah went to bed, Emily sat alone in the dim light of the living room. She opened the photo again and zoomed in. The woman with Mark looked familiar, but Emily couldn't place her. Maybe she'd seen her before at one of his work events, or maybe online. The woman looked younger, her hair perfectly styled, her smile bright. They looked comfortable together, like two people who didn't have to hide anything. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. This time, no words, just another photo. Mark and the same woman, walking hand in hand down a street. He was carrying coffee cups, laughing at something she said. Emily stared at the image, her heart sinking deeper with each passing second. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't innocent. It was real. Her first reaction was disbelief. Then anger. Then sadness. She set her phone down and pressed her hands to her face. The tears came silently, the kind that hurt more because you tried to hold them back. She didn't scream. She didn't curse. She just sat there, feeling like the air had been knocked out of her chest. She thought about all the nights she had waited for him to call, the messages she had written and deleted, the lies she told herself to stay calm. And now one picture had shattered everything. But even in that pain, she thought of Noah, her son, who believed his father was a hero. How would she tell him? Should she even tell him? He was too young to understand betrayal, too innocent to know what heartbreak looked like. The days that followed were heavy. Emily tried to act normal, keeping her routine the same. She took Noah to school, cooked dinner, smiled when she had to. But at night, when the house went quiet, she stared at her phone, waiting for Mark to call to explain, to deny anything. But he didn't single quotes T. One evening, as she was folding laundry, her phone finally rang. It was Mark. Her heart raced. She took a deep breath and answered, trying to sound calm. Hey. His voice came through, casual, almost distant. "Sorry, been crazy busy here." "How are you and Noah?" Emily paused. "We're okay. When are you coming home?" There was a long silence. Then he said, "Soon. Just need to wrap a few things up." She wanted to scream, to confront him about the photos, but something inside her stopped her. She needed to be sure before she said anything. So instead, she said quietly, "Noah misses you." "I miss him too," Mark replied, his voice softening. "Tell him I'll call him tomorrow, okay?" And then he hung up. Just like that, Emily stared at her phone for a long time. The call lasted less than 2 minutes. No warmth, no love, just words that felt practiced. Later that night, when Noah asked if Dad would be home soon, Emily smiled weakly. "Yes, baby," he said he will. But as she watched Noah drift to sleep, she knew deep down that their lives were already changing. The next morning, Emily decided to find out the truth herself. She opened her laptop and started searching through social media. She typed the name of the company Mark worked for, scrolled through posts, events, and photos. And then she saw at a company dinner from last month. There was Mark, standing beside the same woman. Their hands weren't touching, but their eyes were. The caption read, "Great evening with the best team." Emily closed the laptop. The proof was there. She didn't need more. That night, she sat on the porch, watching the rain fall. The city lights blurred through her tears. She remembered the first time Mark told her he loved her, the way he looked at her on their wedding day, the promises they made. She wondered when he stopped meaning them. Her phone buzzed once more. Another message. You can pretend you don't see it, but he's already gone. Emily didn't reply. She didn't cry this time either. She just stared at the rain and whispered, "Then I guess it's time to stop waiting." Inside, Noah slept peacefully, dreaming of a world where families never break apart. Emily wished she could live in that world too. But now, she knew pretending wouldn't fix what was already broken. The woman in the photos had taken what Emily once believed would last forever. And yet, somewhere deep inside, Emily felt something new beginning. Not hope for Mark, but for herself. The truth hurt, but it also set her free. The morning air was cold when Emily woke up. She hadn't slept much. For days, she'd lived with a storm of questions. But now she had made a choice. She would find Mark and see the truth with her own eyes. She couldn't keep living between doubt and pain. It was time to face reality, no matter how much it hurt. After dropping Noah off at her sister Claire's house, she packed a small bag, booked a bus ticket to Portland, and told Claire she was visiting a friend. Claire looked worried but didn't ask. Maybe she already knew. Emily didn't want to say the words out loud, not yet. As the bus rolled down the highway, Emily stared out the window. The rain streaked down the glass, blurring the world outside. Her hands gripped her phone tightly. Every few minutes, she checked it. No messages from Mark. She didn't expect any now. He had built a wall of silence between them. Still, part of her heart hoped she was wrong, that maybe there was an explanation, something that would make all the pain disappear. When she arrived in Portland, the air smelled of wet pavement and coffee. She walked straight to the hotel where Mark had told her he was staying. The lobby was quiet, decorated with polished floors and fake plants. The woman at the front desk smiled politely. "Hi," Emily said, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm looking for my husband, Mark Reynolds. He's been staying here for work." The receptionist typed something into her computer, then looked up. "I'm sorry, ma'am. We don't have anyone by that name." Emily's heart dropped. "Are you sure? Maybe under his company's name." The woman shook her head. "No, I checked both. Sorry." Emily stepped back, feeling the floor tilt beneath her. She thanked the woman and walked outside. The wind hit her face hard. Her mind was spinning. If he wasn't staying there, where was he? She started walking aimlessly down the street, holding her phone like it might give her answers. She wanted to call him, to shout, to demand the truth, but then she stopped. Across the street, something caught her eye. A familiar figure. A familiar laugh. Her heart froze. Mark. He was standing outside a cafe holding a paper cup. And beside him was the same woman from the photos. They were close, too close. She touched his arm as she laughed. And he looked at her the way he used to look at Emily. For a few seconds, Emily couldn't move. It felt like the world had gone quiet, every sound fading except her heartbeat. Her fingers went numb. She wanted to run, to hide, but her legs carried her forward. Slowly, carefully, she crossed the street. Mark turned, and when his eyes met hers, all color drained from his face. He froze, the smile vanishing instantly. The woman beside him frowned in confusion, glancing between them. "Emily," he said, his voice weak. What are you doing here?" She stopped a few steps away. Her throat felt tight, her chest burning. "I could ask you the same thing," she said quietly. The woman stepped back slightly, realizing what was happening. She mumbled something and hurried away, leaving them standing there in the drizzle. Mark opened his mouth, but no words came out. "I called the hotel," Emily continued, her voice shaking. "You weren't there. You said you were working, Mark. You said you'd be home soon. But this is what you were doing." Mark rubbed his face, avoiding her eyes. "Emily, it's not what it looks like." She gave a bitter laugh. "It's exactly what it looks like." He looked up then, guilt written all over his face. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he said softly. It got complicated." "Complicated," she repeated, her voice rising slightly. "You have a family, Mark. You have a son who waits every night for your call. He made you a birthday card last week and said he couldn't wait to show you. But you were too busy being complicated. Mark flinched. His voice was low, almost a whisper. I'm sorry, Emily. I messed up. I didn't know how to tell you. Her eyes filled with tears, but she refused to let them fall. You didn't have to tell me, she said. You just had to not do it. He tried to reach for her hand, but she stepped back. The distance between them felt wider than ever. For years, she had loved this man, trusted him, believed in him, and now she didn't even recognize the person standing in front of her. I never wanted to hurt you, said, his voice trembling. But you did, she replied. And the worst part is, you didn't even stop yourself. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The rain fell softly, soaking the pavement. People passed by, unaware of the heartbreak happening just a few feet away. Finally, Mark whispered, Please, Emily, let me explain. She shook her head. There's nothing left to explain. You made your choice. He looked desperate. It was a mistake. I don't love her. Things between us were different. You were distant, I was lonely. She cut him off sharply. Don't you dare blame me for your lies. You walked away, Mark, not me. The words came out stronger than she expected. It was as if, in that moment, something inside her broke free. The fear, the confusion, the pain. She felt it all fall away, leaving only clarity. Mark stood there, silent. Ashamed after what felt like an eternity, Emily turned to leave. I hope you find whatever it is you were looking for, she said softly, because it wasn't me. She walked away, her heart aching but steady. Mark called her name once, but she didn't turn around. The rain kept falling, washing away the tears that finally began to slip down her cheeks by the time she reached the bus station. Her hands were shaking. She sat on a bench, staring at nothing. For years, she had built her life around a love that she thought was unbreakable. Now, she was realizing that even the strongest bonds could crumble. When honesty was lost, when she got back to Seattle that night, Claire met her at the door. One look at Emily's face, and she knew. You saw him, Claire said quietly. Emily nodded. I saw everything I needed to. Claire hugged her tightly. You don't deserve this. I know, Emily whispered, her voice calm but tired. But maybe it's time to stop pretending everything's fine. Later, after a long shower, Emily stood by Noah's bed. He was sleeping peacefully, his small hands tucked under his pillow. She brushed his hair and whispered, I'm sorry, sweetheart. But everything's going to be okay. She didn't know how yet. But she knew she couldn't keep living in pain. That night, for the first time in months, Emily didn't wait for Mark's call. She turned off her phone, climbed into bed beside her son, and held him close. The storm outside raged, but inside she felt a strange kind of peace, the quiet strength that comes after heartbreak. The moment you realize you've survived the worst of it, and though she didn't know what the future held, one thing was clear: she would never let anyone make her feel small again. Tomorrow, she would start over. Without lies. Without waiting. Without him. 2 months passed since that day in Portland. The memories still hurt, but they no longer controlled Emily's life. She and Noah had moved into a smaller house near her sister's neighborhood, a cozy place with a little garden, white curtains, and the sound of birds every morning. It wasn't much, but it was peaceful, and peace was what she needed most. Every corner of the old house had reminded her of Mark, his shoes by the door, his coffee mug in the kitchen, his laugh echoing in the hallway. This new house was different. It was quiet, simple, and honest. It belonged to her and Noah alone. Emily spent her days working from home, writing for a small local magazine. It wasn't glamorous, but it helped her rebuild her independence. Each morning, she'd walk Noah to school, holding his little hand as they crossed the street. His laughter had become her medicine. He didn't know everything that had happened, but children have a way of sensing when things change. Still, he never asked hard questions, just smiled, hugged her, and said, I love you, Mom. That was enough. One evening, Emily stood by the stove making dinner when Noah came running in, his school bag bouncing. Mom, look what I made, he said, holding up a paper drawing. It was a picture of their little house, the two of them standing outside, smiling under a big sun. Above it, in shaky handwriting, he had written, "Me and Mom team forever." Emily felt tears in her eyes, but this time they were warm, not painful. She knelt, hugged him tight, and whispered, "That's beautiful, sweetheart. You and me, always." After dinner, they watched a movie together, the same one she once watched with Mark. But this time, it didn't hurt as much. It was just a story on a screen. Life had moved on, and so had she. As Noah laughed at the funny parts, he suddenly turned to her and asked softly, "Mom, are you sad?" Emily smiled gently, brushing his hair back. "Not anymore, baby. Sometimes people make mistakes. Sometimes they go away. But that doesn't mean we stop living. We just find new things to be happy about." He nodded, not fully understanding, but comforted by her calm tone. "Do you think Dad will come back someday?" he asked. She paused, then said carefully, "Maybe one day he'll visit. But even if he doesn't, we'll be okay. We have each other, right?" Noah smiled. "Right?" That night, after tucking him into bed, Emily sat on the porch with a cup of tea. The sky was clear, the stars scattered above her like tiny lights. For the first time in a long while, she felt light, not because everything was perfect, but because she had accepted that it didn't have to be. She thought about the last conversation she'd had with Mark. He had called 2 weeks after she left him. His voice had been quiet, almost broken. He said he was sorry that he'd ended things with the other woman, that he wanted to fix what he'd ruined. Emily had listened, but her heart was calm. "Mark," she'd said gently, "for years I waited for you to come home. But the man who left isn't the man I loved anymore. I forgive you, but I can't go back." He didn't argue. He only said, "I understand," and hung up. She cried afterward, not out of regret, but because it was the final goodbye, the end of the chapter she'd been afraid to close. Now, sitting under the quiet night sky, she realized how far she'd come. The pain that once crushed her had turned into strength. She could breathe again. She could laugh again. And most importantly, she could look at her reflection without feeling like a stranger. A week later, she got a message on social media from Daniel, an old college friend she hadn't spoken to in years. He wrote, "Hey, I heard you moved back to Seattle. I'm in town for a few weeks. Would you like to catch up sometime?" Emily read the message twice. Her first instinct was to say no. She wasn't ready for anything new. But then she smiled. This wasn't about replacing anyone. It was about opening a new door. So she replied simply, "That sounds nice. Let's meet for coffee." On the day they met, she felt nervous. She wore a simple white blouse and light jeans, nothing fancy, just her true self. When she walked into the cafe, Daniel was already there, waiting with 2 cups of coffee. He looked surprised, but happy to see her. "Emily," he said warmly, "it's been forever." "It really has," she said, smiling for real this time. They talked for hours about work, life, memories from college. He didn't ask about Mark, and she didn't bring it up. It felt refreshing to have a conversation that wasn't about the past, just the present moment. When she got home that evening, Noah ran to her, asking, "Mom, did you have fun?" She laughed softly. "I did, sweetheart." It was nice to talk to an old friend. "Will you see him again?" he asked with a curious grin. "Maybe," she said, smiling. "We'll see." Over the next few weeks, Emily started to feel alive again. She spent time with friends, took Noah to the park, and even started painting, something she hadn't done in years. The more she filled her days with love and purpose, the smaller the shadow of the past became. Sometimes when she tucked Noah in at night, he still whispered, "Dad will be back soon, right?" Emily would stroke his hair gently and whisper, "That's okay, sweetheart. We're going to be just fine." And she meant it. One evening, as she cleaned up after dinner, she found one of Mark's old letters in a box she hadn't unpacked yet. It was from years ago, back when they were young and full of dreams. She read it slowly, smiling sadly at his old handwriting, the promises, the love that once felt unshakable. When she finished, she folded it neatly and placed it in the drawer. It didn't hurt anymore. It was just part of her story, a chapter she had lived, learned from, and outgrown. Spring arrived soon after. The garden outside her window bloomed with color, bright tulips and daisies, full of life. Emily stood there one morning watching Noah chase butterflies, his laughter echoing through the yard. Her phone buzzed. It was Daniel again. "Coffee later?" he wrote. She smiled and typed back, "I'd like that." For the first time in years, Emily wasn't waiting for someone to come back. She wasn't searching for answers. She was simply living one day at a time, one smile at a time. The pain had taught her something valuable. Sometimes losing someone doesn't mean the end of your story. It just means you're ready to begin a new one. As the sun set that evening, Emily sat with Noah on the porch, watching the sky turn golden. He leaned against her shoulder and said softly, "Mom, I love our new home." She wrapped her arm around him and smiled. "Me too, baby. Me too." And for the first time, she truly meant it. The chapter of heartbreak was over and the story of healing had just begun.